So while people are taking their seats, we have a few minutes more to talk and to share with you. I want to introduce this with one thing that was said a couple of times, a couple of versions this morning, but that struck me about the inference that there are misperceptions that socially engaged art practice students hold about others. We know what I mean by others. But I also wonder whether that might be a misperception about students. Because in my experience at the School of the Art Institute, students aren't one-dimensional. They have motivations, and they have personal histories and experiences. And everybody here, no matter what you studied or multiple things you studied, we were all them. We were all students too, and there was some reason we were there. The School of the Art Institute, Nato Thompson was one of those students. So in combination with what Vito brought up about Flaneurs, the title that we inherited here, as not so much about passing through the city as committed in an activist way to the city, and what you've seen with this work, and so many other comments we've heard today, like Chido, who was born to have passion, as she taught us. Passion is part of what we do, part of what brought everybody together for the conference, and what leads Creative Time to organize these things year after year so successfully. And people's first-person experiences, and we got some great ones this afternoon in particular, really make a difference and really give purposefulness to why all of this work and way of working exists. So I want to throw out to my colleagues here a couple of questions that I hope you might take up both, but what was an experience in your life, a bit back in time, that led you personally to the kind of work you do? And additionally, was there an experience you had with someone else, maybe in experiencing your work, but not necessarily, but an experience you had with somebody else that motivates you to continue to do what you do? And you can ask one or the other, or answer one now and come back to the other.
Are we going on?
Yeah, whoever wants to go. Don't speak too much from your head, speak from your gut. The thing you thought, that came to my mind, but I'm not sure I want to say that. Althea, do you have that in your head?
There's so many things that I could say.
Pick one.
Well, in answer to your first question, I think that experiences that I had early in life are ones that inform my interest in working with groups of people that that perhaps, I mean, I can't categorize all the work, but that exist in some kind of isolation or in some kind of particular ideological situation, comes, I think, to a large extent from two things. One is being raised in a fundamental Christian family, in a very closed ideology, and sort of like that being an important part of my early identity. And the second, when I came of age, and one of my first jobs that I had then had for 10 years was working as a tree planter in remote areas of northern Canada, in very isolated small communities of workers who developed particular cultures every time we were in a different camp together. And in answer to your second question, which I can't exactly remember, but I just had a feeling from it.
In a way, the thing that becomes our feedback, that's somebody's experience that confirms what you're doing or redirects it, motivates it,
for me, I think the thing that rewards me most are the relationships that I have with people who I'm working with, and that's been like so much the case in this last project that I just recently arrived from Croatia. The collaborators and the extent to which every night we would talk about what happened during the day in a group of people who were really involved and committed to the project, and figure out what to do the next day, and just cared about it and worked together with that care. There's nothing like that.
Vito, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I went to writer's school, but I was convinced from when I was, 10 years old, 11 years old, that I wanted to write. The things I loved were, for example, Faulkner. And what I loved about Faulkner was I thought, wow, he has such a hard time making a sentence end. So, which made me think, of course he should, because a period is like dying, So he would go. So okay, so I went to graduate school at the University of Iowa, which at that time was one of only two writers' workshops in the United States, and the second one was at Stanford, founded by somebody who graduated from Iowa. And in my first meeting with my advisor, a person named R.V. Castle, who at that time was a kind of noted short story writer, and he asked me, who was your favorite writer? And at that time, I was obsessed with French writing, like Alain Robbe-Grillet, Michel Butor. So I immediately said Alain Robbe-Grillet. And he immediately answered, I think Alain Robbe-Grillet is worth toilet paper. Which made me think, I think I want to be influenced by that. I think I want to continue being influenced by this, And then it was kind of important to me. When I got back to New York after Iowa, I started to think. I was writing prose, and I was writing parts of a novel, etc. When I got back to New York, I suddenly, probably it was just because I was getting out of school, and when I got out of undergraduate school, there was still graduate. At this time, I knew I wasn't going to get a PhD, so this was the last step. So I came back to New York, and I started to think, why can't I write prose? And I started to think, maybe New York is too fast. It's too fast for prose. Maybe it has to be concentrated on one page. So if you think of something, and it's not that every poem is one page, but I thought, okay, I will do this. Then after a while, after writing for maybe till around 1967 or so, 1968, I started to think, if I'm so interested in movement, why am I limiting this movement to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper? There's a street out there. There's a world out there. So I started to do activities in the street. Once I started to do activities, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, I started to think, I don't think I'm so interested in myself doing this activity. I'm much more interested in where can this activity, and not necessarily my activity, where can activity take place? So I started to think of spaces, and that was the beginning.
Tony, you want to jump in with feedback or a personal point?
Yeah, I don't think there was a specific experience that I can talk about, but I finished architecture school, and I very earnestly went and worked in an architectural office, and I was intent on making a life as an architect. But then there was a crisis, and there was no jobs. So I was out of I couldn't find a job actually, or the jobs that I found were really bad. So I decided, okay, so to make money, I wanted to write. So I started writing for a newspaper, for the cultural supplement of a well-known newspaper back home in Beirut. And one thing led to another. One thing led to another, and then, and suddenly, people notice you, and then I started doing work which is mixes architecture and writing, and it's considered contemporary art, and yeah. And here I am here. Hi.
Madeline.
Real short. Even though we're talking about urban space here, I guess I grew up in Oregon, and I've always had a really solitary engagement with nature, and I think that those times of honing observational skills and thinking whole body, whole spatially, that's one place I started.
We only have 5 seconds, so we're not going to go there. Thank you all very much.